I was at a workshop, I think in 2000, that Brewster Kahle ran at the Internet Archive, and I remember Larry Page was there and a bunch of people, and there was someone talked about this idea of like archiving digital object. The idea of a digital object is something you could index or save or archive. It's hard to say what the boundaries of a digital object are. Like, where does this object end and the rest of the web begin?
Yeah.
And if it's a program you're using and then it's drawing on other things, or it's drawing the internals of your computer. Yeah, no, it's I guess when it was just a web page written in HTML as text, you could say, this is the thing I'm indexing, but it gets much harder now.
It got much harder like a decade back, right? I joined here, 13 years back. And one of the early things that we built was an image search engine. And now clearly there are no words, and all my expertise in using words to index and derive salience was suddenly challenged and taken to, that challenge was extraordinary. So how do you index an image? What does it mean to index an image? And then, as we were kind of grappling with that problem, along came a very successful YouTube and videos on the web. And then, how do you deal with that? Because there's also another factor, added, which is time. That's another dimension added, and speech. So, this is what gets boring around here at Google and in this field of network informed searching.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing that kind of plays into this, and actually this is one of the themes that we've sort of had throughout the course, like every time we talk about one of these big systems, and this includes sort of the market side of the course and game theory, that, you create these systems and you sort of hope that you can sort of observe the world and analyze it and learn things from it. But then if you become successful enough, as Google has, the world starts to react to what you're doing. So it's no longer that Google can just watch and be sort of a spectator or an analyst, or, suddenly everyone's trying to optimize for how Google's ranking them, and the world's reacting to what you do, and it becomes a moving target. I mean, sometimes there are these extreme versions of that, like sort of outright spam that's trying to sort of evade certain things. But I mean, I think, all of us, even sort of innocently or with the best of intentions, we want to look good, and if we're being ranked, we want to look good when we're being ranked. Like, how do you guys sort of think about that as sort of, the web is this target that's moving even as you're trying to index it and reacting to you?
Well, so one of the things that you absolutely need to do is, as you have recognized, first of all, identify that is true, right? Web is not a static ball. It's a bubble. You put your hand in it, changes its shape. That's how I feel about the web, right? Anything that we do, the link graph changes. Things are just going to change. So all the hypotheses that you had about the previous structure of the web may just completely become invalidated sometime soon. So you have to kind of go down to the basic principles, and at the same time be very aware that your algorithms cannot assume any certain shape of connection, of the web graph, and it can't assume any defined order of what defines relevance. So, today if I say, well, a word appearing in a title of a page makes that page more relevant, that's a usually true statement unless you see the same word 10 times in a title, when it suddenly becomes a spammy page. So, this is the foundation that we have built here at Google is so scientific that, this is just part of our signal aggregation system where, one word in a title is a signal. When that number gets to 10, that signal shape changes, and we constantly make sure that that shape is returning to you the most relevant results, which is where our evaluation methodology comes in tremendously handy, because we evaluate our systems continuously 24/7 all the time, and we can kind of detect when shapes are changing.
Yeah, no, it's that's really interesting. I mean, do you think that I mean, as there's also the issue that sort of the results I see aren't necessarily the results you see, and that's certainly true for sushi. The sushi restaurants you'll go to are different from the ones I go to, and I mean, people have certainly said, could this be sort of leading to increases in polarization, that we all see our own view, and it's it gets harder to sort of see the other side of an issue because it's dominated by sort of what I'm used to seeing. I mean, do you guys think about that? I mean, obviously you guys think about that, but like, are there things that Google can do to sort of help push back on that? Assuming that that we think sort of polarization and these echo chambers are a thing that, ideally we'd like to avoid. We can get people talking to each other.
I mean, look, we strongly believe have access to a very diverse set of opinions. So, and that belief is very strongly held at Google. When we wrote this product early on called Google News, the foundation of that product was to say, if there's a story about, say, the India-Pakistan conflict, then we need to take stories from the Pakistani press and the Indian press and the British press and the American press and put them all together and make a cluster out of it and show that cluster to the user, because users can decide for themselves after analyzing multiple points of view, which intellectual point do they subscribe to. And that notion is kind of so fundamental to what we do, and we believe in it. So when it comes to writing algorithms, our bias is always towards giving a diverse point of view and keeping it super relevant. Okay, now, when it comes to sushi, right, I'm gonna not results from California, but I will get results from California because that's about relevance. However, when it comes to topics that are more open-ended, at that point, the level of personalization just down in our algorithm. So the algorithm is very well tuned to understand that this query deserves a lot of personalization. Sushi, pizza, example of that, and it's more like geo-personalization. And then when it comes down to any debate, right? You pick one of the debates that is important at the national scene today, be it NSA, Edward Snowden, you name it. At that point, we seek diversity of opinion, and we seek diversity of where the results are coming from. So that's kind of that's the only way to do it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great way to think about it. I guess so. One other topic that would just be great to get your thoughts on, since we're here talking, is sort of how you think about the future of all this, right? Like, I mean, I remember certainly when all of us used to write surveys on web search, and in the late 90s, there'd be sort of this tradition of saying, like, it's been an amazing 5 years, 10 years, and the next 10 years will be just as amazing. And you always wrote that, never quite being sure, like, what is going to happen? I don't really know. And the next 10 years have been as amazing, right? And as you said, life is never boring, because you sort of keep expecting maybe the world will finally stabilize, and this, but it sort of hasn't. And so, like, how do you guys look out and think about, like, are there big changes coming, do you think, in how people are going to consume online information? Not so just search, but just how they're going to consume the information that they get online.
So, I mean, this is a very intriguing question. Every technologist should think about it all the time and have perspective on it. I have developed mine over the last 20 years of doing this. My strong belief is that stabilization is so yesterday. Ain't gonna happen. Technology is this beautiful thing where new technologies are built, they come along, and suddenly they couple with old existing stable technologies, and you get something that did not exist. Now, the closest analog I see in the real world that I subscribe to is that over 80% of water species live in reefs, and reefs cover less than 1%, and I'll get my numbers right, but less than 1% of ocean surface. Why does that happen? Mainly because there are so many species there that they collide. And once they collide, new species are born, and those are just amazing things. Universities are those warm waters for academic thinking, right? Person from a field networks walks into the office of person from another field, information retrieval, and suddenly things like PageRank are born, right? And now you can take it at a much bigger level and look at technology. Search existed. My advisor at Cornell did search starting from the late 50s, okay? Until the web came along, and suddenly these two put together exploded and gave exponential benefit to the world. And then mobile networks came along, which existed in nascent forms earlier on from the 50s and the 60s, but not at the scale where every person has it. And then you combine all those and mobile search came along. In the meantime, speech recognition has been working on the side, and you can get speech recognition going, and now suddenly you can search for anything you want while you're walking on the street. Okay, so the rate of benefit, the products that are being developed for the user is actually accelerating rather than stabilizing, because of all these technologies coming together and new things are born. Like today, we are walking around anywhere and we are having a debate or whatnot, and someone asks, so how tall is Barack Obama? And previously you would think about going back to your computer, opening a browser, typing a query. Today you just touch the mic and let me just show it to you. How tall is Barack Obama?
Barack Obama is 6 feet 1 inch tall.
So here we go. Now suddenly, putting all this together, you have gotten this product that people can use while they're walking around. And now you can imagine maybe cars will come along, which you can kind of talk to kind of already today. And suddenly a new paradigm is born of finding information. So my vision of the future is that you would be connected to this biggest repository of human knowledge that has always that has been created today, called the web. And you would naturally be able to seek any answer, any piece of information that you need, anytime you want, anywhere you are, with zero friction. And that would make you far more productive and far more human, because today we waste too much time in doing mundane things, trying to find that tiny bit of information that, had we found it on time, we would have done something else productive, or played with our kids, or spent time with friends. So that's my view of where technology is headed. It would exponentially improve to a point where you would actually it'll fade in the background. It's always there to help you so that you can lead a more meaningful life.
Yeah, no, it's a spectacular vision. I mean, it's sort of an amazing sort of triumph of like the whole idea of information retrieval, right? That retrieving information was going to be somehow central to our everyday experience. I mean, so like, when you used to talk with your advisor, Jerry Salton at Cornell, I mean, obviously anyone working in the research field says, I hope my field will become big and will become central. I mean, like, but like, did you guys ever talk about fantasies that included like everybody would be issuing queries to an information retrieval system many times a day, every day? Like the sense which has become embedded in our lives, it feels like even the most passionate information retrieval evangelists might not have seen that level of engagement with IR systems. Yeah.
Absolutely not. In our wildest dreams would we have thought that we would be here and building all this based on this sleepy field in the early days called information retrieval, that every common person walking on the street, every one of your family members, every one of your friends would be using ideas from your field that you nurtured for so long. So, I can just say this has been a tremendous journey for me, last 20 plus years of working in this field.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting.